say we've got it made.
What up, bud? Hey, man! If we can't have Mason with us in person, we'll have him in song. How you feeling, bro?
Me sing Pretty One Day.
Not today.
Not today, though. Just pretend I'm Eric Mason instead. That's a cover of a very famous song called Isolation. Oh, that's a song that no one's ever heard before by our friend Eric Mason.
You want to read some emails and listen to some voicemails because we haven't done that in a while. We got some weird shit in our email and our voicemail.
I think we should. Hi, everybody. It's the What If Podcast. In case you didn't know what you were doing. We certainly don't know what we're doing. Just kidding.
No.
We do. We're talking about isolation today, but before we get into some pretty cool far out strangeness, we should probably start with some pretty cool far out strangeness. As we do.
Emails first or voicemails first?
So just really quick, for those of you who don't know, you can call and leave us a voicemail at 612-246-4614. We have listeners leaving us voicemails on the regular. Sometimes Spencer and I accidentally answer our phones, and that's a listener.
I took Skype off my phone so that
you wouldn't do that anymore. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's cool.
Scared the shit out of somebody once.
Oh shit! You're a real person in the world. You can also leave us. Yeah, exactly. Hey. You can also send us an email. We get tons of emails every day from you guys, and we really, really appreciate them. That's hi@whatifpodcast.com. hi@whatifpodcast.com. And yeah, you guys can leave us notes or tell us cool stories because we love that shit. I have an email that I want to read. Maybe we should start there before we get into the audio content.
Do it.
So we got a great email this week from a listener whose subject line of their email reads, Did
you lose it?
Yeah, no, I got it.
Okay.
Daffy Duck touched my nose, parentheses, aliens? Question mark? I won't read names here, but listener says...
Except for Daffy Duck.
Yeah, that's the one. Listener says, "What's up, my sweary boys? Yeah, the title is fucking true. I'ma set the scene." Phenomenal. 5-year-old me laying in my Wiggles bed. Yes, a Wiggles bed. Which Wiggles Wiggles like the TV show Wiggles? The Wiggles?
I'm not familiar.
Oh, I'm pretty sure there's a kids show called The Wiggles.
That makes a Wiggles bed sound slightly less weird, but still a little bit weird.
I'm gonna go with yes. My bed was right beside my parents' bed on the right side. The door was in front of me a few feet, and there was a mantle in front of my parents' bed. Scene set.
Got it.
Phenomenal email. For what it's worth, that was included in the text of the email. Scene set. That was not my color commentary. So on multiple nights, I would see a toy soldier or a gnome looking at things and walking on the mantle. They also looked like holograms from Star Wars. I'd also see blue and rainbow lights outside the bedroom windows at night. Now the fucked up stuff.
That sounded pretty fucked up.
I was going to say, fantastic segue after coming out of something pretty wild.
More fucked up than I would like.
I was laying in my awesome bed. See, he's like, fuck you, Spencer. My bed's not weird. My bed's awesome.
It could be both.
That's true. I was laying in my awesome bed. There's a couple feet in between my parents' bed and mine, and so the door opens and Daffy Duck from motherfucking Looney Tunes walks over in between my bed and my parents.
Say, you all didn't happen to do a bunch of drugs, did you?
5-year-old drugs. In between my bed and my parents, I sit up and I'm looking eye to eye, and they tapped my nose, and then he proceeds to run like Roadrunner straight out of the room. I'm 16 now, and I have no idea what it was or if it happened, but I remember the touch. Ooh. I have heard aliens do this to kids when they take them to make them more comfortable.
Wait, anyway, do what? Boop them on the nose or appear to be Daffy Duck?
I believe...
or both.
I believe a listener is saying, like, disguise their visual appearance to something that's more comforting, like more accessible.
Got it. The old screen memory trick.
Yes?
Yeah,
question mark?
It's a thing that
screen memory?
Mm-hmm.
Why like they call it that?
Because it's a memory that obscures what actually happened.
Oh, got
like
it.
I saw an owl coming through the window. No, you didn't.
No, you didn't.
It was an alien.
Got it.
Got you, bitch.
And the aliens inserted another memory
Correct.
of it being an owl.
An olive.
An olive
I was
branch.
abducted by an olive.
Yum. Listener ends. Email me if you have questions if you want to. LOL. Thanks, guys.
Tight.
Very tight.
You gonna leave off that last line of that email?
He says,
Fuck
P.S. I make music and that new Big Cats drop was dope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was dope. You're right, dude.
Shout out to Big Cats and Lydia for their new single.
You want to hear some voicemails?
Do you think he had a dream?
Oh, I don't know. I think he was high.
He was 5.
Well,
Don't be a dick, bro.
can be both.
I guess. I don't know, man. That's a cool story, though. Like, email me if you have questions. Yes, many, but like, also, I
I'm
don't
not
know
sure you can answer them.
I was gonna say, I don't know if you know either, my dude. But cool. Thank you for the email, listener. I'm not gonna say your name because I don't know if you want me to. Jesus. Well,
Hey, bitch. I think you ought to check your water meter. Let's just say there might be a bit of a flaw in that sucker.
Did he say a frog?
Maybe that might compromise your
I can't
water
understand what Cam
metering
says.
Services.
that's true.
Oh shit! I'm quitting. I'm kidding. Y'all be quiet now. All right, hush.
He said, "Y'all be quiet now." Hush.
He ended that email with, "All right, hush."
Hush.
Can we pull "All right, hush" for a drop? That was for anyone who missed it. Spencer had a water meter checker who referred to himself as fat and sassy last week, and Spencer thought it was Cam in disguise. So,
Sounds like it was.
sounds like.
尚未领取，如有任何疑问，请按铃。
I'm sorry. Please
由
hold.
华语部门员工为您查询。
I'm gonna need some help with that one.
What? That was just. That was just
our
straight up.
voicemails went off the rails this week, but
What?
尚未领取，如有任何疑问，请按铃。由华语部门员工为您查询。
if anyone wants to translate that for us, we'd welcome the help.
Yeah.
We got robots calling us in different languages.
How do we know what language that was?
We don't. It sounded.
How would we know what language?
Oh, I don't
that was?
know. Somebody tells us because they know that language.
Yeah, I suppose.
This person wants us to call them back. We don't really do that on this show. Let's see what this one's about.
Hey guys, it's Fidel from California. It's like 1 a.m. over here, but I was going to queue up some music before going to bed.
Tight.
And I was going through YouTube looking at some stuff from Sage Francis, and I stopped on Blackout on White Night, and I started geeking out because down in the comments 6 years ago, it's Big Cat's Beats saying, produced by Big Cat's Beats, and I'm still geeking out. Oh my God. Anyway, huge fan of the podcast. Hope you guys have a great day.
Thanks, Fidel. We hope you have a great day too. Also, shout out to Spencer for putting people on blast for not crediting him on their songs.
If you're gonna, rip and illegally upload our shit to YouTube, at least say whose it is.
What do you mean?
If you're gonna upload somebody else's song to YouTube, at least say whose song it is. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, I thought it was like the actual Sage. Like
No, it's some doofus that just goes and posts other people's music on YouTube.
Oh, got it. I thought it was like the official Sage like music video or release.
That would have been funny.
And you were like, excuse me, Sage. Sage Francis is a rapper for y'all that don't know, and Spencer has made some songs for him.
Hey.
Last one.
All right.
Did we play Trick Daddy earlier? This sounds familiar. Do we have a serial Trick Daddy caller?
Okay, what's up? Shut up.
I hope so. I hope people continue to call in and sing Trick Daddy lyrics into our voicemail. I'm in full support of that.
Voicemails are getting weirder by the each.
Shout out to you guys. Yeah, if y'all want to hit us up, that's the way to do it.
Have you ever noticed that nowhere else is the phrase "by the each" used except when buying bananas at a grocery store, or like not quite a grocery store, like a Target or a Holiday Station stores?
I'm sorry, that's a real thing that they say about bananas?
Yep. and literally nothing else because it's the stupidest phrase I can imagine.
I feel like that's just a computer printed some algorithm wrong once.
First of all, each is what you're trying to say.
Yes.
Also, try
not
saying,
necessary.
Try saying each a few more times and still believing that it's a word.
Each. It already feels gross. I said it once and now my mouth feels weird.
It's like something a bird does. It's not a word.
Each? It's like when a bird does the running man.
Say, you all didn't happen to do a bunch of drugs,
right.
did you?
We have not. One last thing I want to say before we dive into the meat of today's show. We want to give a big shout out and thank you to everybody who's tossed us an iTunes review lately. There have been a shitload of them coming in, and y'all have been saying some really nice stuff. And we just wanted to say that we want to say some really nice things about you. You're pretty, and we love you. We hope you have an awesome day. If you want to do that, it helps the show out a lot. You can just head over to iTunes and toss a review in there. And on our 300th review, we'll do another Facebook Live show like we've done for each 100. Yeah. Yeah, each 100 reviews for the show, we hop on the Facebook page. We pop it in the Facebook group. There's one of each of those. And we do a little live show and let y'all pop in and ask us questions. And
at least until we have like 1 million listeners and then we're getting like 100 reviews a day. I can't live on Facebook. I'm sorry.
I mean, maybe that becomes the show every day. We just wake up and be like, what do you want to know today, motherfuckers?
And we'll have nothing to talk about because we will have no life experiences
24
ever again.
hours since we were there.
You want to talk about uncontacted peoples?
Oh, man, do I ever.
All right.
So this was halfway a listener suggestion and a homie suggestion. Shout out to Steve, who
the fuck is Steve?
The homie Steve. Steve tossed me a link and said, "Hey, you should think about this." And I went down a pretty weird, crazy, wild rabbit hole about this whole concept of uncontacted tribes. So, uncontacted is probably not the best moniker for it. Not anymore, at least. Not anymore. But by uncontacted, it's like, well, close
limited
to
contact.
uncontacted. Extreme, in some cases, extremely limited contact. Mm-hmm. And in some cases, not even necessarily contact as much as like outside world observation, maybe.
Visual contact.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But not like any sort of exchange of goods or services or information or communication. Yeah. In some cases it is. What do you mean?
I didn't come across any of those.
Well, like the Sentinelese people haven't had an actual exchange of goods with them for like 20 years. I'm not saying it's never happened.
Got it.
But I'm saying like there are many who go for extended periods of time with just decades worth of just visual observation more than anything.
Should we start with them, by the way? The Sentinelese?
Well, I want to get there, but I wanted to give a couple more stats about the uncontacted folk first, because I think they're kind of fascinating. I know we've both researched this, so I was going to ask you the question, but you probably know. Do you know what the estimate is for uncontacted peoples? Again, uncontacted, not the best descriptor, but do you have an estimate of how many of those uncontacted peoples there are on the planet?
Total people or like number of
separate groups of uncontacted people?
No, I have no idea.
Okay, so I found this number varies, but the average estimate I've seen is 100, which that alone is kind of fucking crazy to me that there are 100 groups of people that are deemed uncontacted by groups like Survival International, which is where I got that estimate from. They do a lot to like protect indigenous people's rights, which includes a lot of these groups because they're uncontacted indigenous groups that have just lived in solitude for a really long time. But at the same time, I can't imagine that's correct because Brazil alone claims to have 77 separate uncontacted tribes just in their country.
I would imagine if you've had no or very little contact with a group, it might be difficult to determine a whole lot of information about even how they identify or which groups identify as one group or multiples or are aware of each other
and that's part of the inexactness of it too, is if you're just observing, there are potentially many we don't know about or many that we see in multiple places. And
how much observation are you even doing though? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, from what I've been able to see, most of the countries that have these types of groups, whether it's a government body or some sort of NGO that does it, they do like safety checks, essentially, on some cadence where they just sort of check them out, do a flyby and go like, are they still around kind of thing.
Safety check is a hilariously dumb term for that. Hey, you guys have been here doing just fine for 60,000 years. We keep fucking everything up over here. We just want to make sure you're okay, though.
Yeah.
Even though you've been around for, like at least 30 times longer than we have.
For sure. I feel you. What I found from the safety check stuff is, for the most part, it seems like they are doing it to monitor interactions with like poachers or like land removal. So if people are illegally logging into the areas where an indigenous tribe is, potentially taking away their natural resources, they want to like.
I bet they know how to deal with that.
I mean, I don't know. I don't think they know how to deal with like chainsaws and like controlled burns of their.
I bet they do.
Well, we'll talk about that.
The Jarawa do for sure.
That's real. But yeah, so the most of these uncontacted tribes live in some sort of protected land. So most of these government organizations protect the lands of the uncontacted tribes to protect them both from poachers and land hoarders and people who might try to take advantage of them, but also to protect some of those people from some of these uncontacted tribes. Because as we'll see, being uncontacted for extended periods of time, you're not necessarily entirely friendly to newcomers.
You also have very different immunities than whoever you might be coming into contact with for the first time or for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, so that's one of the biggest ones. And we actually have multiple cases of these uncontacted tribes having a first contact moment where a group tries to do a pilgrimage, meet, exchange goods, do some sort of peaceable introduction. And it's gone disastrously just through an initial set of handshakes and meetings of a group of people. One of the cases I saw dropped a population over the course of 30 years from 5,000 to 41 people.
There was an uncontacted tribe with 5,000 people?
It was a collection of islands, or excuse me, a collection of peoples that were interconnected in the where is it? Yeah, the Andaman. It was in the Andaman Islands.
Oh.
So similar area. But at one point, yeah, they thought the group was up to 5,000.
Damn.
Should we talk about the Sentinelese and the Andaman Islands?
Yes.
Where they at?
The Andaman Islands are off the coast of India.
Mm-hmm.
And the Sentinelese are called that because they live on North Sentinel Island. We don't actually know what they call themselves because they haven't told us. And also, we probably can't understand them for the most part. I was fascinated to learn that in one of such attempts to contact the Sentinelese people, they tried to grab indigenous peoples from the surrounding islands in the archipelago. It's your favorite word. It's been a minute.
Yeah,
I can say it now, though, I think. Well, I will get to it.
Okay.
I'll just try and sneak it in.
You got to get
later.
it in flow. Yeah.
I got to get in rhythm.
But they did take different indigenous peoples from the archipelago to bring them there to try to see if they could understand the Sentinelese or communicate to them.
A dialect or if it was a totally different language.
Yeah, and there's been no ability to communicate with them. So the thought is they essentially have their own language that's fully undocumented and fully their own.
Their population is estimated anywhere between 40 and 500.
Yeah.
But because there's so little contact, and because of where they live, it's a pretty dense canopy. So even flying over the island that they live on, you really can't see much of anything in terms of what do their living situations look like and how many people could that area sustain and in what ways are they using the land.
Right.
You really have no visual read on any of that.
Yeah, and it's also the North Sentinel Island is 60 square kilometers, so it's decently big. I mean, you wouldn't just doing flyovers of that, you're not going to be able to see the whole thing from one stretch kind of thing.
Yeah. The 2001 Indian Census apparently included North Sentinel Island. And for the official census purposes, they recorded 21 males and 18 females. So a total of 39 people.
I just don't understand how they could do that to any degree of exactness.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's a guess.
Because, like, there are photographs and there is footage, but even in those, it's like you're only seeing the people basically on the beach or through the canopy. There could be, I mean, as the ranges go, there could be hundreds more.
It goes on to say this survey was conducted from a distance and may not be accurate.
You don't say. You don't say.
It's estimated that they have lived there for, like, uninterrupted for about 60,000 years.
That fucks me up so hard.
And it was probably originally populated through a migration out of Africa.
It was, what I was reading, they basically said as people were building boats and leaving Africa and going out, the African diaspora into the world, this set of islands, if you look at the archipelago, it's actually technically it's further away from India than it is from like Thailand and like Myanmar and stuff like that. Okay. It's just that it is an Indian colony an Indian territory because of Indian seafaring later on. But idea being that people left Africa, scooped around the underside of India, and potentially on their way to Asia stopped at this archipelago and
stayed for 60,000 years.
Stayed for 60,000 years. But they call them the most remote tribe in the world, not just remote in the way of like they're pretty far from a lot of shit, because they are. I mean, it's smack dab in the middle of Bengal Bay and the Indian Ocean, but also they're remote in the way that, to your point, it's been 60,000 years that they have lived uninterrupted in that space.
Which, like, when you have language and culture evolving in isolation for 60,000 years, like what ability would you even have to communicate with those people?
You mean because they are just so different and they're
right. Like, would we even have a common understanding of the world at that point to where like language could be translated and mutually understood?
I'm sure eventually it could, but it would require incredible amounts of work because for all we can gather, it's not like, to your point, it's not a dialect. It's not like it's not a one-off.
It might not even have a common ancestor with any of the languages that we use now.
Right. So we would have to go like, what do you like? Hold up a rabbit and be like, what do you call this? Yeah.
But yeah, even that like is influenced by your culture and 60,000 years of uninterrupted, isolated culture evolving is crazy.
Totally. And also, if you've lived in isolation for that long, think about how many things you don't have translations for.
Right.
Think about how many, I mean, they're a hunter-gatherer society. They don't have any agriculture from anything that we can tell. You know, I was saying the island is big enough that it would be hard to observe, but if they were cutting down trees to grow some sort of foods, that would be very visible from flyovers.
They don't appear to. So we know they're hunter-gatherers, but their understanding of like animals in the world is literally limited to the natural supply of animals that reproduce and procreate on this 160 square kilometer island. We think.
Oh, what do you mean?
Well, we don't know for sure that no one has ever left and come back, or no one has ever joined from elsewhere. Or
true. We do know that there have been, we'll get into this, but some exchanges of goods over time. But for the most part, they're living very much in what they can get on that island.
So maybe let's jump to some of those contacts or attempted contacts.
Sure. How far back you want to go?
The first one I found was 1880.
Okay.
And that was Maurice Vidal Portman.
Okay.
It was a British expedition to try and basically survey the island, see what or who was there.
Yeah, just really quick. I found a story from 1771.
Oh shit!
But not like a guy named John Ritchie who worked for the East India Trading Company had driven by that island and seen lights on it.
Driven?
Sorry, taken his boat. You could drive a boat, right? I mean, steer.
I mean, not then, really.
I guess there wasn't a motor in it. He gusted his way, guided his slip, if you will. But yeah,
So you're saying they had electricity on the island in the 1770s?
I'm saying they were burning fires on the island, and Ritchie
slightly less exciting.
Saw it in 1771 and was like, "Hey, I'm pretty sure there's
What's up with y'all?"
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's somebody over there." I just say that to say I think there was potentially some of that influenced the British exploration of the island too, to be like, we're pretty sure there's people there. Also, there was a shipwreck that came up on the island about 20 years before Maurice went there.
Really?
Yeah, in 1867, the Nineveh wrecked on a reef near it, and a bunch of people actually like went ashore and had to defend themselves against the Sentinelese. And a rescue party eventually came and got them after they kind of separated themselves. So that was like the second time I think that people actually were like, no, there's people there on that Sentinel Island.
Wait, are there two shipwrecks there? Or are you conflating two stories?
What are you talking about? Is there a later shipwreck?
Uh-huh.
I have it in 1867, the Nineveh.
Oh, I guess there were two. There was one in the 1980s also.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Anyway, Maurice, this dude from Britain, was attempting to follow British policy at the time regarding, quote, unwelcoming tribes.
Dude, this is buck wild.
It's insane and the worst.
And the worst, yes.
Their policy was to kidnap a member of the tribe, quote, treat them well, give them gifts, and release them back to the tribe, hoping to demonstrate friendliness. Because nothing says I want to be your friend like kidnapping.
Yeah, right? They, did you see how old this Maurice Vidal Portman was at the time of this expedition?
20.
20!
Yeah, you only lived to be like 24 back then.
I mean, yeah, but like...
Also, that's not true at all.
No, I know you're joking that it was a shorter lifespan.
Fuck with me, I'm
Yeah, right. That's what Maurice said. All uncollege educated ass.
For
like
all 8 years of his adult life.
I can lead an expedition. Follow me, motherfuckers. Let's take somebody. Jesus, Maurice.
No, want to be our friends when we're done.
Yeah.
So shockingly, that didn't work out very well. They, at the time, they had been observed just retreating whenever anyone would approach the island. So rather than like come out and greet somebody or come out and fight somebody, they would just go back into the jungle and wait for that person or people to leave them alone. However, Mr. Portman found an elderly couple and 4 children who he tried to, like, he took all 6 of them and was going to try and, quote, befriend them.
Sounds like some 20-year-old logic going on here.
The 2 elderly people died.
Because when you're old and frail and don't have the same immunities, duh.
Yeah.
Of course you do.
So this is maybe the dumbest part of all of it. After seeing the 2 older people die, possibly from contracting diseases that they did not have immunity to, they released the 4 kids back to the tribe with gifts and stuff.
Yep.
And by gifts and stuff, I mean probably also disease.
Right?
Like, how every step of that plan is just garbage.
It's very stupid. It's an incredibly stupid way to go about earning favor with people, being like, I'm going to just take these people real quick and then I'm going to give them back to you.
The only thing that tribe knows about you now is that you killed 2 of their elders and kidnapped 4 of their kids.
Right.
And then when those 4 kids came back, probably some people got really sick.
Right.
That's going to earn you favor, so to speak.
And also maybe died.
Yeah. So that's what Britain was doing in the 1880s.
Brilliant.
With the uncontacted tribes.
Brilliant. This is going to be a dumb question, but it wouldn't be the first time I've asked one. How how developed was our understanding of the transmission of diseases in 1880?
I don't know. I would guess based on this behavior, not strong.
Very, yeah.
Yeah. It also kind of helps to explain why the Sentinelese specifically amongst these tribes were so vehement about remaining isolated, and and why they were so willing to like violently fend off outsiders going forward,
because they had this experience.
Yeah, and that becomes part of your culture and your understanding of other people.
Yep.
And if that's at the time maybe your only contact with these outside people,
yeah,
your only understanding is that they kill us.
Right.
They take us, they kill us.
Right. And they don't have the same set of understanding that's like, oh, well, that flag is Spanish and that flag is British, so the Spanish people are going to treat me differently.
Also, no, they wouldn't.
No, they wouldn't. But that's what I'm saying is like they wouldn't even have the cognitive understanding of the world to be like, not all people are the same.
But in the sense that that bad things will happen to us if we interact with them, they sort of are all the same.
Yes. Well, yeah. To what degree they understood that to be the case? Yeah,
who knows?
They were accomplishing the same thing. Yeah.
So for a long time, there was little to no contact, or at least documented contact, with the Sentinelese. In the 60s and 70s, the Indian government attempted some what they called contact expeditions.
Yeah.
With several of the tribes that lived on the Andaman Islands, the Sentinelese being one of them. They had a slightly more humane approach, which was to leave gifts on the beach.
Yeah.
And then try and, from a distance, observe
how
any reactions or interactions with those gifts and their presence, though at a distance.
Yep.
One of the people who led those expeditions and this like ongoing contact was an Indian anthropologist named T.N. Pandit. And in the mid 70s, there was a documentary film made called Man in Search of Man, where they actually filmed this expedition to go out to the islands, leave food and gifts and stuff on the beach, wait a few days, see what happens, film it, and then maybe, depending on how that goes, interact with the people.
It's pretty cool. There is actual, like, you can go on YouTube and watch the footage of the Nat Geo crew, like, throwing things overboard and, like, trying to figure out how they're going to do stuff. Didn't go great, though.
No, the Sentinelese had learned from their previous interactions and came out
slanging.
Came out firing 2.5 meter long arrows at them.
Which, so if you look at the photos and the videos, because I read that same thing, they have really long bows. Like the bows, I mean, they're known to be relatively short people, but they're like, they look to be almost their height. Yeah. So, but how is that like 2.5 meters? What is that, like 5 feet?
7.5.
7.5 feet?
Roughly, yeah.
How is that even possible to fire a thing that long? I don't understand the physics of that.
And they were pretty accurate, apparently, and actually hit one of the people.
The director, no less, in the leg.
Who was trying to film them, got hit in the leg with one of these 7-foot long arrows.
Yeah.
And they had to retreat at that point.
Okay, film made. Time to go. The film crew of the gifts that they left. So they left stuff. I think the idea was they could like get through and put stuff on there quickly and then get the fuck out of there.
Right, because unless there's someone on the beach when they pull up, they're not going to notice instantly necessarily that there are people approaching.
Right. And apparently they were like the people who dropped the stuff on the beach were police officers with like riot gear on or something like that. I didn't see any footage of that, but they had some sort of like armor protection in case they were to come get them. But they left for them a miniature plastic car, some coconuts.
Why?
I think a way of being like, this is what we
Your island's not full of plastic yet. Here you go.
Here's some. Wouldn't it be fascinating to know where the plastic car is today? Did they keep it?
I bet it's in the ocean.
Did they huck that shit into the ocean? Some coconuts, a live pig tied, a doll, and
wait. They took a live pig out there on the boat?
Mm-hmm.
That sounds like not a fun item to have on your boat.
Yep.
Okay. Sorry, carry on.
No, it's a fair question. It's also good to focus on because there's a point to that in a second. A doll, and then they brought him some aluminum pots and pans for cooking over fire with.
Do they cook?
For sure.
Oh, okay.
Cook food over fire?
I had read specifically that the Sentinelese maybe did not.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
That they just eat all their meat raw? I had seen a part where they were talking about reports of cannibalism in the group, but that was later found to be that they think they cremate bodies. So it's like at one point
it was so some people some outsiders came to the island, they killed them.
Yep.
And they had learned from the last time that they interacted with
the diseases.
Outsiders,
they burnt their bodies.
Burned and buried their
That's
bodies
right.
so that to not contract disease or to limit the spread of disease.
Yes.
Yeah.
Smart.
They were not eating people.
They were just
Trying
burning
not
them
to
so they couldn't.
die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
I don't know from a scientific standpoint how effective that is, but they seem to at least understand what was happening.
I'm curious, how do you know like how we would know that they don't necessarily cook their food?
I don't totally understand how we're getting any of this information, to be honest, and I'm therefore not sure how accurate any of it is, because a lot of it is like one little tiny observation here from this interaction.
Yeah.
40 years later, this other little tiny interaction.
Right.
We flew over it 20 years after that, and we saw this thing for half a second. I don't think we can assume that any of this is totally accurate.
For sure. And also, yeah, I don't know. It just seems it would be pretty, I guess it would be pretty shocking to me if, like, in the way that we learned how to have fire and food and combine them for better digestion and like all that stuff, that isn't something they would have just taken on over time. But
I don't know.
Yeah, so just to go back to the Man in Search of Man documentary really quick, my favorite detail of that was apparently they took the coconuts and were like, these are cool. They took the pots and pans and were like, we'll figure out what to do with this. Apparently, actually, some people have speculated that they cared more about the cookware because we know that they've scavenged shipwrecks in the past because they have metal devices and they obviously are not mining metal where they are. So if they have tools or knives or arrowheads or metal beads or things like that, those are all things that we can observe, but they wouldn't have been able to get that from anywhere else.
And we know that because those metals don't occur naturally where they are, or are we saying we're assuming that they are not running mining operations?
That's the latter. That there isn't enough sophistication in terms of, tools, or there would be some evidence of mining if
evidence that we would observe how though.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. But like mining, you have to like dig and blow up and refine and smolt and like...
We fly over them every few decades. They could be doing all kinds of cool shit.
Buck wild shit there. Yeah, no, I suppose it's possible. It's definitely possible.
You were going to tell me about a pig?
Yeah, they killed it and buried it.
Oh, they didn't eat it?
No.
Oh, they just felt bad for it and killed it? Or what? I
think it was maybe more so the... the same thing as we kill and burn.
This thing doesn't live here. Just to be safe, let's yeah.
I don't know what that has.
Yeah.
And they
it's
also
probably smart, honestly.
Yeah. They also buried the doll as well, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, fuck that.
Yeah.
That thing is creepy, I'm sure.
I'm creepy, I'm sure. And
why'd you give me this little tiny person?
Maybe potentially has diseases.
Yeah. I mean, all of that stuff probably did, or at least could have
had germs on it.
Do we know were coconuts known to them? Is that like a thing that grows there?
So It's a good question. The video actually that you can watch online, that's snippets from the making of the documentary. You can see him throwing them into the water and the people like going to get them out of the water.
Okay. So they were like immediately, oh yeah, we'll take these.
It seemed like it.
Okay.
It seemed like it was like, oh nice, I'll take that. And they were like throwing them up on the beach and then going to get more.
I just wonder if that's is that because they knew specifically what they were and they wanted more of them, or was it like, this is a naturally occurring thing, this is probably safe, we'll make use of this somehow?
It's a good question. Yeah, I'd say watch the footage to everybody out there and judge for yourself. I got the impression that it felt a little bit like this is familiar enough for me to be safe.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe it was just like visibly enough to be naturally occurring and being like, all right.
This is clearly a thing that comes from a plant and therefore can't be
doesn't have
too
blood
harmful.
and germs
So that was, do you remember specifically what year? It was 70 something.
74 was the year that they went to film it. I'm not entirely sure what year the documentary itself came out.
But that footage would have been from 74. Or
Yeah,
that contact what happened in 74.
When they went, yeah.
So in 81, there was a shipwreck that got grounded on a reef off the coast of the island. August of 81, it was a cargo ship called the Primrose.
This is 1981.
Yes.
So about 7 years later.
Yeah. The ship was not in danger of sinking, but they could not move. They basically got grounded, like made it over the top of a reef, and then the middle of the boat got stuck on the reef, and then they were just screwed. And they radioed for assistance, but it was going to be a few days before anyone could make it to them.
Sure.
So they settle in to spend a few days just stationary off the coast of this island.
Do you know who was on board?
Like
what country it was from, or how many people were on
it? I don't.
That's cool.
It was a relatively small crew, but I don't know where they were coming from.
Got it.
They decided to stay on the ship rather than go to the island, just I think probably because it was a known quantity and they had supplies and they would be fine for a few days.
Right.
They'd been there for a couple of days when a crew member from the ship spotted a group of men emerging from the forest along the coast. It appeared to be a group of indigenous men, and they were all armed with wooden spears, bows, and arrows. And the crew estimated that there were about 50 of these men along the shore.
See, this is also why I think the 2011 estimate of there being like 40 total people is bullshit. Because if 30 years earlier,
I think it's less an estimate of the total population and more like we counted 40 when we flew over, so we're gonna say 40.
Got it? Because we can't prove there are more.
Yeah,
but like that to me says if you just sent the 50 fighters of the island, I mean, there's got to be equally that many women, maybe equally that many children, maybe equally that many old people as well.
Or they were like, it's one boat. How many guys can it take? Have you 50 go.
Right.
And there are 10,000 people.
Maybe
I'm not really
many,
sure how we would know.
Yeah.
Any of those numbers are total guesses based on extremely limited information.
For sure.
So the guys on the ship are unarmed and now outnumbered by these 50 armed dudes along the coast.
This is kind of scary. I didn't find this story. This
getting
is
a little
scary.
nervous.
Yep. I'm getting nervous because I don't know how this is about to go. I'm scared it's going to go. God damn! Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Noob.
The 50 men on the coast start getting into boats and coming out to meet the Primrose.
No, thank you. No, we're good here. We'll be out of here in like just one day. No, thanks. Whoa, I'm nervous. Fuck yeah.
So the captain radios again, a little more urgently, saying, "Hey, we could really use some help getting out of here. Our situation has changed a little bit."
Did they have like anything to protect themselves with?
They had like found improvised things, but no actual weapons or anything like that.
Mike, I got a spoon and a pan.
Yeah, throwable stuff. They had one flare gun, which worked for a little bit.
Uh-oh.
To be like, we got a bright, loud thing. Don't fuck with us.
Fuck off.
Yeah.
Fuck off.
Luckily, the water was kind of rough and the ship was kind of high. So the Sentinelese guys could not actually board their ship.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm imagining the, steel exterior of a ship would be like, how do you, unless you put a ladder down, how are you getting up the side of that?
And they were sitting even higher than normal because they were grounded.
Oh, right. So you'd have to get, the hull was higher out of the water.
And as far as they could tell, the Sentinelese, so they had like canoes basically.
Yeah.
And they didn't have oars. They used really long sticks to push off of the ocean
crazy
floor.
I've seen this before.
And so they also sort of had a maximum depth that they could get out to.
Got it. Otherwise they lose.
Otherwise they can't control where they're going anymore.
Damn.
So they reached the boat but were unable to get on. This standoff went on for like a few days.
So they're just like boating around them, shooting arrows at them and shit?
Mm-hmm.
Nah, bro.
For several days.
No, bro.
I do really like, though, that they gave them a few days to figure it out first.
You better fuck off.
Right. Like, they didn't come out.
You better fuck off.
They didn't come out They didn't come out shooting the first day.
Yeah.
They're like, you know what? Give them till Friday.
Yeah.
If they don't figure it out, if their friends don't come help them, we'll encourage them to leave.
If they don't realize they fucked up, we'll help them realize they fucked up.
So they call again. They get assistance by helicopter after the second call, and they have a relatively small crew, 2 helicopters. They get them out of there. But they had to leave the ship and everything on it. And eventually, you can still see the shipwreck on Google Maps.
Whoa, word?
Yeah. It's like, it's hard to tell because I didn't actually measure it on the map, but like pretty close to the coastline. And I don't know when the most recent satellite data was from, probably within the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And it's all like rusted out and you can kind of see through parts of it because it's been sitting there for 30 some years now.
Whoa.
37, depending on when that satellite image is from. But all the cargo was still on board, everything. So the Sentinelese probably at some point took a lot of that stuff and salvaged a lot of whatever was on it. I couldn't find anywhere like what type of cargo they were carrying.
I was going to say that because that could, hypothetically, that could change a lot.
Well, and even the raw materials. Even if you just essentially scrap a cargo ship.
That's enough metal to be like,
a lot. It's enough of a lot of things to go a long way.
Yeah, I guess especially if you know what to do with some of it. I wonder,
or you do what you want to do with it. You get creative.
Right. More like, well, if there's a bunch of oil in there, like fuel would be potentially valuable. But if you know what oil is and figure out
new things to do with it.
Oops. Apparently this happens when this happens. That's fucking fascinating, man. How is that financially viable or responsible for a company to be like, yeah, let's just fucking leave it?
Well, because you're going to die otherwise.
What do you mean?
You got to go fight some people for it if you want it back.
No, I'm saying if they got a big tanker and came back and like hooked some chains to that motherfucker and just towed it out, you don't think that's a thing that they could do without?
Maybe.
I don't know. A cargo ship full of cargo, that's got to be millions of dollars worth of equipment and like shit.
Maybe.
I guess.
I also don't. Yeah.
I guess maybe international cargo shipping companies are also like fucking eat your losses and carry on. And
I'm sure there's got to be some amount of loss just factored into that business inherently.
Yeah.
And like people with 7-foot long arrows and spears are, I'm gonna go ahead and write that off as a loss this year on our taxes. You know, like,
hey man, go get our cargo. You go get your cargo. I've seen what happens when I'm near that cargo.
I think I would just let my accountant figure that one out and leave that shit where it is.
Yeah, well, that's fair. That's fair.
But yeah, I'll put a link to the Google Maps. Also, in the process of this, I discovered a cool website called Weird Google Earth that just shows you weird shit you can see on Google Earth.
No way. Is it just legit like actual links to the latitude and longitude of certain stuff?
Yeah, and like a screenshot, like in the middle of some desert, someone spelled out Fred.
Oh, that's awesome.
Using shipping containers.
What?
It's a big Fred.
That's humongous. Mm-hmm. I mean, a shipping container. Wow. All right.
Yeah,
well,
it's a good time. There's a bunch of weird shit on there.
Maybe we have a new game to play at some point on the show. Weird Google Earth examinations.
Last thing on the Sentinelese, unless you had some other stuff.
I don't know. Are we about to tell the same story or not?
The most recent encounter from 2006?
Yeah,
go for it.
So, the most recent and I guess the last encounter that we've had. So the Sentinelese survived the Indian tsunami of 2004. We know because, speaking of those safety checks that I was talking about earlier, they flew a plane over them a few days after the tsunami because they were borderline in the epicenter of that massive tsunami.
Yeah.
And they flew a helicopter or a small plane, I think it was a helicopter, over them like 3 days after the tsunami to be like, are they okay? If that killed all the animals, what are they going to do?
Hey, guess what? They still don't like people coming by.
Fuck you! Just shooting arrows at the fucking helicopter, man.
We're fine. Fuck off.
This is how you know we're fine.
Still don't like you.
Fuck off. Yeah, so they survived all of that. And that was the last time that someone had intentionally gone to check on them and see, kind of what their status was.
Guys need anything? You good?
Yeah, from an official perspective, I guess.
What's up with y'all?
So 2 years later, in 2006, there were 2 men who were hunting for mud crabs near the island, which I was not familiar with until now. And apparently it was a thing where groups of boats would leave, usually from Port Blair, which is the capital of the Andaman Islands, and go through the reefs in multiple different fishing boats with nets and traps and go crabbing. So they would go on these trips and come back, and one night they had dropped anchor, did a little bit of boat partying, and passed out in their boat.
It said in the story that I read, an improvised anchor.
Yeah, I read that it was.
What do you think it was?
I read what it was.
And?
A rope and a rock.
That's a pretty good start.
I mean,
what shape is the rock?
Well,
how good are you with knots?
Right. Which apparently none of those things worked out for them because their improvised anchor came loose in the night, and their boat floated towards the shores of Sentinel Island.
It's not where you want to be.
It's not. Apparently, the other fishermen were trying to wake these guys up. They were drunk on palm wine.
Why are you being so lazy, my boy?
Come
on, man.
Going back to the
You okay?
No, I totally zapped out, bro. Totally zapped out.
You were talking about some fishermen being
going back to the
blacked out.
Going back to the drunkening of the night before. The boat party was the phrase I was looking for, and I couldn't find it. The boat party from the night before. So basically, these 2 guys wash up on the shore of Sentinel Island. The other fishermen are going, "Hey, dudes, come out of your pass out."
It's not where you want to be.
Yeah. It got a little dicey after that.
His head fell off.
Kinda, unfortunately.
Yeah, they killed both of them pretty quickly.
They killed them both pretty quick. They shot them with arrows and apparently macheted their bodies into pieces and buried them in shallow graves in the sand.
I feel like at this point, it's your fault if you get killed by them, right? They've made it very clear how they are going to deal with outsiders.
100%. And
just leave them alone.
And
don't try and take their crabs. There are crabs elsewhere. We can all have crab.
Yeah.
Those are their crabs.
Yeah.
Let them have it.
Let them have them. The Indian government also has designated them a sovereign nation.
Yeah, it's super illegal to be anywhere over there.
Yeah. Can't go.
There's like it's a 10-mile buffer or something.
Something like that.
Or 10-kilometer probably buffer around the island.
Yeah.
You're already breaking the law.
Leave
them alone.
And they said, actually, one of the fathers of one of the fishermen who was murdered was basically like, look, they flew too close to the sun. Like, they're not supposed to be there. He's like, I don't want retribution. Some people were saying, how would you even go about it? Like, what would you even do?
Go about what?
If you wanted to potentially prosecute these people for killing people, how would you even go about it?
You can't.
You can't. They're a sovereign nation. You have no language barrier. Somebody was like, what would we do? Just arrest the entire village and like take them into society?
Also, that's super illegal.
Totally.
Also, you would die trying.
Yeah, for sure. Or many people would die trying.
That's the funniest part. Hey, you killed somebody. Let's go back and make them be accountable for. You're going to die.
Yeah.
Leave them alone.
It's not going to fly.
They're fine.
Yeah. So, turns out after 2006, they've most thoroughly been left alone.
Yeah.
And as far as we know, they're still doing their thing.
The Jarawa have been slightly less fortunate.
Yeah.
We got a little bit of time. We want to quickly go through that.
I think that'd be great.
Okay. So the Jarawa are another indigenous group living in the Andaman Islands. They had no or very little documented contact with outsiders prior to the mid-90s.
Yeah.
There were a few maybe of those like contact expedition type interactions. The dude we were talking about earlier, T.N. Pandit, the Indian anthropologist, had a couple interactions with them along the same lines of, here's some stuff, we'll fuck off. Please think kindly of us in the future.
Oh, you killed our pig. Cool. Got it.
We were going to anyway. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
I see where we're at.
So prior to 97, they were also extremely and vigorously and violently independent.
Yeah.
They were not accepting of any external groups or people. They also have killed a few people over the years.
Sure have.
They've since, I don't know about been integrated, but they've had much more contact with the outside world. And there's actually, they agreed to be filmed for part of a documentary a few years ago.
The footage is fascinating.
Yeah. And we apparently have translations of their language.
Yeah, my understanding of it is that the dialect is more traceable in the area, and the way that they got in to do the filming with the Jarawa people was they basically had, I don't even know what you would call them, scouts, like people who already had established super limited modes of contact and communication with them, and kind of fed information back and forth. Here's what we want to do. Hey, here's what they want to do. Mm-hmm. And kind of had a messenger go for, I think it was literally years before they got permission to like do this.
So they're pretty aware of the outside world for a group that has been isolated for so long.
Well, especially now.
Yeah. And there's an especially fascinating part of this documentary where they're talking to three young men from the tribe, and they're talking about poachers, because there are poachers who will come to the island to hunt wild boar that live on the island.
Yep.
And these three guys are just saying like, "Oh yeah, we just kill them when they come here because they kill our boar, so we can't have that."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Yeah, one time there were 10 of them and we just sneaked up around them and killed 10 of them." And one dude's like, "I got 4 that day."
Yeah.
And it's just like no hesitation, no like moral objection.
No.
It's like, well, yeah, that's our stuff and they were going to ruin it and they were going to ruin us. So yeah, we kill those guys when they come here.
Yeah. It is fascinating the level of it's just factual to them. It's not problematic. It's not they're not guilt ridden over any of it. It's
but
just
also
like,
not like celebrating it.
no. It's just straight factual. Like this is what happened, and
Like you asked me about poachers. Oh yeah, those guys come here sometimes,
and then we kill them.
we kill them.
Yep. End of conversation.
Sometimes they kill our boar, so now we start eating deer.
Right.
The women don't eat deer because they think they're cute.
Yeah.
It was like, and it's hard to tell with how accurate the translations are and stuff, but like from watching them say the translations on screen, it seemed to
Body language matches. Yeah.
mostly match up.
Yeah.
Recently, they've had much more and not very desirable contact with the outside world.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of settlements. So they have like a reserve as defined by the Indian government where that land is exclusively theirs. No one is allowed to enter their land. But there, obviously is a border around that, and there's no buffer zone or anything. It's like their land stops, and on the other side is something totally different.
Yeah.
And so they're brushing up against the outside world more and more often and more directly. And there was a road built through the entire length of Andaman Island.
So originally for trucking, right? To be able to truck goods and stuff from ports to other locations on the island.
Yeah, within the island. Yep. That road has now been is being used for other purposes than just that, and it's I think recently become just a totally open road.
Yeah,
and people essentially started doing safaris to go see the Jarawa. So somebody would sell tickets on a bus tour to tourists to say, "Hey, you can go see one of the most
rare
isolated, uncontacted tribes of people in the world. Just give me $50 and we'll drive through there."
Yeah.
And there are lots of obviously laws around that, and lots of laws around interacting with or taking photos of or giving things to Jarawa people.
Yep.
It seems like one can ignore and or bribe their way out of most of those.
Yep.
If you go on YouTube, there is cell phone footage of Jarawa people taken from these tourist buses.
Yep.
And it's affected them negatively in a lot of ways.
For sure.
Their population is down to only 270. A lot of that is thought to be from disease. I'm assuming from interaction with outside people.
Yep.
And it's just from a cultural standpoint, it's changing their understanding of the world and how they interact with the world.
Right.
After tens of thousands of years of consistent isolation and culture, I guess.
Right.
They also in 1997 was the first time that Jarawa people were seen to be moving outside of their designated reserve area.
Yeah.
And within 6 months, there was a serious measles epidemic within their tribe. And then again in 2006, had a second measles outbreak within their tribe. So even stuff like that, we went outside of our designated area and just kind of briefly cross paths with the outside world. And now we have an instant huge problem for our whole population.
Right.
That is now only a couple hundred people.
Right. Yeah, it's the overlap is not overlap's not the right word, but the edges are really, really dicey, and they get it gets really, there are some pretty serious moral and ethical quandaries about how these people should be treated, and it seems like the vast majority of sensible people are of the full belief of unless they genuinely are pleading for outside help, which has happened in the Amazons due to some of the poaching and landmass stealing that we talked about. We have had indigenous peoples leave their uncontacted tribal areas and basically say we're dying and we need help. But unless that's happening, fucking leave them alone, because anything else is bad for them and bad for us.
Even that is so, the theory and the practice of that are so different. And I don't know if you can ever really have that situation happen, because like with the Jarawa, okay, they have reserved land. It's illegal to enter it. It's illegal to interact with them. It's illegal to put anything onto that land, all of that. And yet at some point, this side of the fence is theirs and this side of the fence is someone else's.
Right.
And there's really no way to keep those things separate.
Right.
Somebody walks up to the fence, you're interacting.
Right.
You're breathing the same air.
Right.
From a cultural standpoint, they're now aware of buses and cars and people that look different and different languages and all the, like, I don't know if there's really at this point in our evolution a way to be totally isolated anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, even the Sentinelese people, which are about as isolated as you can possibly be, they are familiar with helicopters and cargo ships and all the things that just standing on the beach of their island you would see go by in a day.
Right. And I think they're the ones who've been the most successful because of their hostility. Like they protect their island at all costs, and the Indian government has done the same for them.
Well, they eventually convinced the Indian government that it wasn't worth it to try and do anything else.
There's also that. I just mean from a way of like protecting the land as what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's crazy how that level of hostility is actually the thing that is keeping them most protected and alive.
It might be the only thing, honestly.
Yeah, for sure. If you want to know more about some of the projects that are underway to help these types of people, you can learn more at survivalinternational.org. It's a pretty cool organization. I was poking around on their website a lot today, and they have some really cool and interesting campaigns and ways to help act if it's stuff you care about. So we're going to do a part 2 next week on isolation, but we're going to take a totally different spin on it, and we're going to go to space with our isolation takes.
Yeah.
So y'all can look forward to that next week. Lastly, if you want to support the show and you want to get twice as much of it, go to patreon.com/whatifpodcast. You get a second episode every week of every month for just $5 a month. Thank you to all the new Patreon supporters. Thank you to you all for supporting and listening to the show. We love y'all.
Love you. Bye.
See you next week.
Gotta fight a war of no pardon. I'm calloused and I'm rusted. Got my long bruise by sleeping in.